Tonight, we'd like to welcome David Gornoski to the gathering. David is a precious soul. God's given him creativity to investigate many avenues. As we talked today and shared what we feel the Lord's put in our hearts, he holds a wealth of information and connections that I'll be anxious for Dr. Counts to meet and different ones, Jordan and just everyone to get to connect with him to hear. If you received the gathering notice, you saw some of his background, so I won't go into that, but I will just tell you that it's a God thing that he's here, and I hope you enjoy. Just sit back and listen, take notes. I would imagine taking notes will be good. David, I'll turn it over to you.
So thank you, Linda, for having me, and thank you, Jace Carnes. Jace, could you stand, please? Jace has had an infectious enthusiasm for Jesus Christ and the love of liberty, and he has seen God work miracles in his life. And Jace has been through a lot, but he always stays positive, and he's always going around the town trying to spread the message and get people excited. And there's a lot of negative people out there that want to spread negativity, but Jace Carnes isn't one of them. He's someone who always lights a fire in your soul to fight for Christ. So thank you, Jace. Everybody, Jace Carnes. And I'm glad to be back here at Alexis. Thank you for having us here at this nice, beautiful restaurant. And I had a great lunch today with Linda and some other folks, and I'm a little concerned. Everybody here is telling me that Alabama is not that conservative in the legislature. Is that true? Gosh, who's electing those people? Anybody know? So what's going on here? Everybody has this reputation that Alabama is super conservative or liberty loving, but that's not what we're hearing whenever I come out here, so that's disappointing. But hopefully we're going to have a more interactive, and I know every speaker says that, they say, let's make this interactive, and then they speak uninterrupted for an hour and a half. I don't want to do that. So I really want to, I like interviews and dialogues and conversations, so let's try to do that as much as possible. So I'll try to ask you guys some questions. But I thought, since everybody, how many here are for Killer Kamala Harris getting elected this year? Anybody? Okay, great. So it's safe for me to talk now. I don't have to worry about getting attacked or physically accosted. But what I think is interesting is that, people are feeling it in the air. Something's changing, isn't it? You can feel it in the air that we're at a precipice. And we can go the good way, or we can go catastrophic ways, right? And there's a lot of creative ways that humans spread evil and wickedness. I was just listening to some of the things you were talking about, all the devious little ways that they're spreading misery and pain, and particularly targeting children. It's always about attacking the kids, isn't it? It's how you know you have a demonic enemy when they're going after children, right? And so I want to put them on the defense. So first, before I give my talk, I want to propose something. Everybody write this down, a new legislation that I want everybody to start calling their local state legislator about. It's called the Marriage Liberation Act. And this is something I've been proposing around the country in state legislatures. It's time to bring marriage back to the church. The church. This is not something that government should have a purview over. Now, we have to make accommodations for the fact that most people are going to stick, just like most people stick with public school. So I say we have a public option. That's the same standard marriage laws and courts and everything else everybody's used to whenever they get a marriage license. But there should also be a private option where you can return to your faith institution. And if they want to step up and create covenant agreements with biblical grounds for exit that honor the children and honor God's design for marriage, that would allow a lot of young people. Let me tell you, as a millennial, I know lots of people who are in their 30s and 20s who do not want to get married because they were a victim of easy divorce. And they've had enough of it. Their dreams were dashed when they couldn't see their daddy at their birthday, or they couldn't see him at Christmas. They had to share him next year. And that just does a horrible number. God doesn't do that. God never, He doesn't divorce. He always comes back to his bride Israel when we read the Old Testament. And yet we have such a cheap view of marriage and the sacrament of marriage. And we need to stop that. And so here's one way you could do it. Ask the state legislature with this Marriage Liberation Act, and we can give you more information about it, the details, which would allow for a private option. So again, Southern Baptist, Catholic, whoever you are, your church organization could set the terms of agreement so that you don't have such cheesy, easy breezy, no fault divorce. That was the foundation, was legalizing no fault, easy divorce whenever you need it, whenever you want it for $50. Okay, that is a disgrace to children. And that's where the attack, and I know this might hurt people's feelings, but that's where the attack on children really started in good, strong stride. Because you didn't get abortion on demand until you got divorce on demand. Right? And you start to crumble the foundations of what is right and what is true, and how can you chide children for not keeping their word when they look at a society that is impotent at keeping their word. And that starts with the foundation of what civilization is built on, which is marriage. So we need to allow faith institutions in people who are young, men and women who say, you know what? I want a foundational marriage that has a strong covenant agreement that honors God and doesn't send us off to the birds. So look into that, and we'll continue to press for that and get folks to rally around this idea. So thank you. So that was just the kind of little introduction, but what I really want to get into tonight is something you guys are all very passionate about. How many here are still receiving side effects or ailments from long COVID or other things here? So still, and she's really feeling it. So what are some of the things that you guys are noticing? Are you guys noticing that there's continual, you were telling me, Linda, things that you're seeing in your own private life. What's going on? What are you seeing with your side effects? Are you still having chronic fatigue? Let's just open it up right from the beginning. Anybody got a?
Well, I almost died. My long COVID attacked my heart, and I went to cardiac arrest and was shot back to life on April the 4th of 2023. It's been a long road. The pacemaker defibrillator now. I'm on lots of heart meds. I've had 2 heart ablations, and it's not the whole thing I like. But God is my healer, and I've pursued natural medicine or natural path, natural doctors. In addition to medical doctors, I've seen every cardiologist you can imagine. I've had everything you can have done medically done. They just said, we can't help you anymore. These are the top doctors, the research doctors that are like Indian doctors. And they're like, come back in 1 to 2 years, maybe we'll do some more research. Dr. Bond has been an angel, helped me a lot. But my natural path, God has used her to change my whole life, but it still affects me, and it's taken a lot of my life. I had another near-death experience this past March, where I was rushed to the ER and almost didn't make it. So, but all this came from the spike proteins through COVID. So, and I'm not vaccinated. I would be dead. Dr. Vaughn said, if the spike proteins I received through COVID were enough to almost kill me, I would have received a whole lot more with the vaxes, and the way it affected me would have taken my life. So it's about God's grace, and I'm grateful for medicine. I'm grateful for doctors and the ER and ambulances and all of that. I needed all of it. But as far as long-term health care, there's nothing they can do.
That's insane. It's just, you hear so many stories like this, and you hear of children who are 8 years old with colon cancer. For the love of, what is going on here? How is that possible? This was supposed to be an elderly disease. Now young kids, not even 10 years old, are getting horrific chronic diseases. Anybody else have any experiences with long COVID or vaccine injury or chronic diseases in general that you'd like to share that has been an affliction for you in this season? Yes.
Well, I'm George. I just wanted to thank the gathering. Saw that we're Maryland elected. Had I not come here in February of 2022, I don't think I would have lasted very long. So it didn't right between the holidays.
Delta.
tonight, I've got pain where it's hard to drive long distances,
Yeah.
and I used to do national park road trips across the country. You know, so I haven't driven out of town in
Yeah.
3.5 years, but I can do the villages, but thanks to MedHelp 280,
Yeah.
Jordan Barnes' system, I got all put on the steroid pack, cost $15, and it stopped a lot of it bounced from
Yeah.
right between the eyes to COVID cough, it took 3 years to get over, and then I still have post-exertion malaise and fatigue, where I'll go walk 5 to 8 miles,
Yeah.
and the next day just walk.
Yeah, this is he's a young, fit guy, and he's got fatigue, he's got eye inflammation, it's a disaster. But it should happen, but we're gonna fix it, right? We're gonna stand together.
I just have faith,
Yeah.
I never lost faith, I never got anxiety, I never got depressed. I just would say righteous anger,
Yeah.
like Christine Anderson, great member of European Parliament
Yeah.
in Germany, said, I will make my very existence an act of
Yeah.
defiance. So that's the attitude I have. But yeah, it's frustrating because I haven't been able to resume my career. I used to work in healthcare, travel the country,
Debilitating, right?
and basically I just work part-time projects and all. And it's, that's the blow to self-esteem when you
Yeah.
can plan how you're going to feel tomorrow.
Yeah.
And the next week you can take a vacation or to just be productive is very frustrating.
Right, that's disgusting what they've done. Now, who here knows someone who has type 2, 1, or type 1 or 2 diabetes? Raise your hand if you have, no, so that's everybody here. So we're in America, that's how we know we're in America. Isn't that sad? And you go to a country that says they've got some of the highest percentage of Christians, and it's got the highest rates of disease. Does that sound funny to you? It doesn't make sense, does it? Who here knows someone who's had cancer? Well, it's almost everybody. Again, that's how you know you're in America. You know, that's how you know you've been relying on politics to solve your problems as a nation. Unfortunately, that's what you get. I was just talking to Jace on the phone. You know, every time you talk to a legislator, whether it's state or local or federal, you know, you get them one-on-one. They'll say, hey, you know, those guys are all rotten. It's all corrupt. Well, could you do this for me? I don't think that's going to work. You know, but it's like it's diffused responsibility. Nobody can take responsibility because it's a little group of them, right? You corner one of the little weasels, and they'll say, oh yeah, it's horrible. It's the worst thing you've ever seen. You're like, oh wow, sounds like I got someone. And then they go back to their little group, and you never see nothing again, right? And they know how to sweet talk you. These are great people. They'd be wonderful car salesmen, but unfortunately, they're selling us into oblivion. I mean, everybody just raised their hand for cancer, diabetes. How many here know someone who has heart disease, heart attacks, and they're, you know, my goodness. It's everybody. It's like a wave, only it's a wave of illness. Seeing the hands go up. Isn't that sad? That's America. That's what we're known for. And everywhere we go on our corporations that own our government, and they do own our government, they spread that same diet. And they give that same disease menu to every nation that has the misfortune of surrendering their sovereignty to our multinational oligarchs. And so we got to change that. So I like to stay positive. I just want to set the table here that there's a common factor in all of this. And there's a lot of layers to it. But ultimately, it's inflammation. Inflammation is driving these diseases. And then inflammation and breakdown of our body starts in the metabolism. Metabolism and the thyroid help regulate the relationship between the body and the soul and the spirit. It's all interconnected. And the medical establishment, even the best of them, are still stuck in a wicked, lying paradigm of everything being genetic, everything being matter and evolution. It's all atoms. There's no spirit. And that denies the entire truth of the human body and how it's made. So we're electrical beings. There's a book called The Body Electric by Robert Becker that talks about how electricity and electrical fields work in our body. And magnetism is a part of our body. Magnetism. And we know these things vaguely, but you know, how many, if you're Christian, you're kind of told stay away from anything that says magnetism or anything about the body. That's woo-woo, dangerous New Age stuff. And unfortunately, I have a problem with that because God created everything and it's all under His dominion. And when Jesus was lifted up, He said, I will draw all men unto me. and I will put everything under my foot. It will all be under my footstool. I will rule, and I am the king of history, Jesus says. And his followers should not be ruled by fear. And if they're ruled by fear, they're going to be sitting like sitting ducks for false medicine to poison them, to poison their kids, to the point where you have kids having diabetes, colon cancer. I mean, come on. Let's get real. It's time to change this whole paradigm. So we have to be able to think creatively, we have to think energetically, and we have to not be afraid that just because some little pagan New Age hippie got some goofy ideas and used the word electromagnetism, therefore Christians should stay away from what God designed. You know? So all these things just need to be understood. And we're kind of living in the dark age as it pertains to television and what's official medical knowledge. So I thought I'd just throw out a few ideas for food for thought. One of them being carbon dioxide. Who can tell me anything about carbon dioxide? What's carbon dioxide? Anybody want to give it a shot? CO2. What do we know about CO2? What do you hear about from the television? Or anybody got any ideas about CO2? Global warming. So CO2, what's CO2 going to do to us, we're told? Kill us, someone said. That's right. That's what they tell us. Anybody else? Have you heard anything about CO2 that's positive? Makes plants grow. They do acknowledge that. It's kind of hard to deny that. Yeah. But we're told that CO2 as it relates to humans is a waste product, right? Did you hear that in school? You breathe it in, and then you breathe in oxygen, and you exhale CO2 as a waste product. Wrong. It's not true. Carbon dioxide is the key to oxygenating the tissue in your body. Carbon dioxide is the handmaiden that allows oxygen to do its work in your body in a healthy way. So there's a lot of people. Let's talk about COVID for a little bit, and we'll tie all this together. We're going to tie all these little, what's diabetes and all this. Remember, inflammation. They've messed up our medical system by assuming that everything cannot be energetic or magnetic. None of that's in part of our bodies. They've told us that CO2 is an evil thing that's going to kill us, and it's just a waste product at best for humans. But CO2 actually is essential for, again, utilizing oxygen, getting oxygen to all the tissue in the body. In fact, when your thyroid is working well, when you have a high thyroid, you're producing CO2 all the time in your cells. It's the crown jewel of your respiration system. It's not a waste product. But isn't it funny that people who are Malthusians, have you heard of that term, Malthusians? The neo-Malthusians, they think there's too many humans on the earth, and they want to depopulate us. And they've been convincing the population that they think of as cattle anyways, that they should hate CO2, and they shouldn't want it rising in the atmosphere. And so they've convinced all of us, and even in your textbooks, CO2 is a waste product. And you go, CO2 is killing us. We must stop and capture all CO2. Turns out it's totally wrong with science. It's just right there. CO2 is essential for life. And actually, animals that are more efficient at using CO2 live longer. So for example, they've done studies of mammals like rodents. Rats don't typically live that long, whether they're in captivity or in the wild. But naked mole rats, have you ever seen a naked mole rat? Looks kind of like Klaus Schwab. And it's funny that the people that look like naked mole rats don't want to teach us about what naked mole rats might tell us about ourselves. Naked mole rats, they live to be 35 years. The average mouse, just a few years. And the naked mole rat knows how to burrow underground and produce more CO2 in its body. The life insurance agencies, they don't lie because they make their money based on figuring out what kills you, right? So who lives the longest? Who has the highest average lifespan? People who live at high altitude. When you're at high altitude, the higher you go, the more your body retains CO2 in all of its tissues. Okay? So CO2 is essential for a healthy metabolism. When your metabolism becomes impaired, it doesn't produce CO2. It produces a cascade of stress hormones, and those stress hormones are behind the things that these individuals have shared because of long COVID or vaccine injury, and they're behind the chronic diseases, all the underlying foundation. When your body does not produce CO2 because your thyroid is impaired because of toxins and pollutions in the world, your body builds up lactic acid. This is stuff you don't hear about, is it? You don't hear about it. What is this? What is lactic acid? Lactic acid, you may know it when you go out and you work out at the gym, and the next day you feel sore. You ever work out too hard? That's lactic acid building up. It's a fermentation material in your body, and it is the antithesis of what CO2 is. CO2 brings oxygen, vacillation, it provides healing, all kinds of things, and the body is able to recover very fast, very swiftly. Whereas lactic acid is the foundation for cancer, diabetes, heart disease. Those are always present, a high amount of lactic acid buildup in the body. Any questions, or anybody have anything to chime in so far? What's that? Yeah, well, it's important to go to the gym, but you don't, over exertion creates stress in the body, creates inflammation, and a high presence of lactic acid. So you want to do good exercise, but you don't want to overexert to the point where you create chronic stress in the body. Have you heard about runners, people who are marathon runners? They look at their heart and it's worse as if they were a couch potato their whole life. Massive inflammation. Massive inflammation. So all of those things are foundational for, again, acute diseases, toxins, pollutants, and chronic diseases. All are driven by the reduction of CO2 in the body. So when you're a child, your thyroid is functioning very high, you heal very fast, and you produce a lot of CO2 efficiently. And as you get poisoned, primarily by a product you may have heard of called seed oils. Have you heard of that? I talked about this when I was here last time. That's one of the things I left, because everybody, and I'm glad everybody was asking questions about things, but there was a lot of doctors here. It wasn't just me speaking. And everybody kept wanting a pill to take. And I had to get up and say, guys, these pills are one thing, but you're really going to want to take some more holistic measures, like getting seed oils out of your body. They're disgusting. They're toxic engine lubricants. You don't want to put them in your body. And we've demonized things that God created because we think we know better than God. We think we know, like the Tower of Babel. I can build with my own might something that can reach the heavenly powers on my own. So everybody was having heart disease starting to rise in America, and they said, let's blame Grandma's butter.
Oh, yeah.
Grandma's butter did it, right? She's easy to pick on. Where's Grandma's butter lobby? So she got really hit hard, and lard and tallow, right? There was a little small group. They had a one-room office. You might have heard of them. You might have listened to them with great reverence for many years. The American Heart Association. They were a small little group. Nobody ever heard of them. Nobody cared about them. And they got along with a group called Procter & Gamble. You ever heard of them? And they had a product called Crisco, the new fat of the future. Hydrogenated vegetable oil. This is going to replace Grandma's dangerous butter and lard. So they said, hey, we'll put you on the map. We'll do shows if you tell everybody that Crisco is the new fat for your heart. And so the American Heart Association they went from a nobody to the top. And they went on TV shows, radio shows. This next program is brought to you by Crisco. Remember how they used to sound? This is what the American Heart Association recommends every day. You eat that, and it's going to create inflammation. It's going to reduce your thyroid's ability to produce CO2. It's going to create a chronic state of lactic acid, which is going to impair your ability to heal properly. And that's the foundation. Go look and see. Go fact check me on any of these things. Go look and see. Cancers are always in a foundation of lactic acid, fermented. It's like a fermentation taking place in the body. That can't be present when CO2 is rich and your thyroid is rich. You may have heard of another thing. You ever heard of serotonin? Right? All these people who have mental health issues, losing their minds, wanting to destroy the country that they live in, wanting to change their gender, feeling like they're not their self, unless they have mutilation surgery. All these things are related to excess serotonin in the body, which is again something that comes out when your thyroid is impaired and your CO2 is inefficient and you produce lactic acid, and you start to create a cascade of chronic stress hormones in the body. So when you're young, God designed us to live an abundant life.
Amen.
And when you're young, let me tell you an example for the healing properties that we don't even we haven't even scratched the surface of understanding, and myself included. I'm on a journey in this. But when you slice they've had stories. Little children that have lost the tip of their finger, the whole nail, all of it chopped off in some incident. If they don't mess with it, the doctors have shown this. And you put like a cigar cap around it. You ever seen those cigar holders for cigars? And you put the little cap top on the tip of the finger, it'll regrow a whole new finger. A whole new nail, perfect, beautiful. It's not abnormal. It's not off-brand looking. It's the full, beautiful nail of that child right back where it should be. And that's because when you limit oxygen exposure, CO2 is able to be retained in the tissue and the healing properties that salamanders and newts, they have a high CO2 ability. They regrow their limbs and tails and everything. Children are so efficient metabolically, if all things being equal, if they're not being poisoned by chicken nuggets. If they're so metabolically strong, they can heal and their wounds heal and everything's so fast and efficient. When you take CO2, for example, diabetics, have you heard they have problems with like foot ulcers that are hard to heal? And that's because there's a lack of oxygen and vacillation. There's a shutdown going on, lots of lactic acid. And when you put a bag of CO2 around their foot, it allows it to heal. It allows the wound to heal. The CO2 is absorbed through the skin. So you can literally take CO2 baths and oxygen, it's like a CO2 gas suit you wear up to your neck. Can't inhale it at that 100% level, but as long as it's on your skin only in a little suit, people make them. I have a friend that makes them. You can absorb through your skin. It can reduce all kinds of issues with circulation issues, healing issues. It can deal with a whole host of organ problems. And it's just the master set of anti-inflammation in the body is the CO2. And all of your organs are working in harmony with CO2. And when they're impaired, everything goes awry. And that's exactly the most important thing to stop the chronic disease epidemic is to ban seed oils. We need to ban these seed oils. These are toxic. They have no place in the human body. And even ban some of these other things you hear about, like flaxseed oil. You've heard that's good. It's rich in omega-3. That's where all the cellulite comes from. Omega-3, they've marketed this to women. It's pretty sick. And they get women all worried about cellulite. And then they tell you, oh, well, we'll fix it. Drink flaxseed oil. And that omega-3 goes straight into creating cellulite. So they've got these people on Instagram pushing. Take your shot of flaxseed oil, linseed oil. It used to be called linseed oil. It was used, you know what I'm talking about, in homes, right? And now that's why it literally creates a polymer plastic-like substance in the body which creates what is called cellulite. It's not natural. Go look at paintings hundreds of years ago. It's not about being overweight or not that produces cellulite. It's about how you got overweight. If you're eating toxic seed oils or omega-3, fake oils, a lot of fish oils are rancid. Stay away from fish oils. It's a scam, waste of money. Most of it's rancid. I'm sorry if anybody sells fish oils. I'll try to work with you on something else. But all these things are important. Another thing that we need to remember is we have to get rid of this hatred of the body, which is at the heart of some people's false forms of Christianity. You know, this hatred of the body. You ever heard that saying, so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good? Now, that's not Christianity. Christianity is thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so if the earth is where the kingdom of heaven is breaking into, we're not flying. I like that song. I'll fly away, oh glory. Beautiful song. But if we're flying away, we're flying right back. In fact, that passage that Jesus says, in my Father's house are many mansions, is the word for inn. It's like a hotel. It's the word they used for a temporary lodging in that time, in that language. So this is a resting place. Heaven is a resting place. We're coming here. This is what God loves. And he loves our bodies, and he wants us to figure out why we're all being poisoned. And it's our generation's obligation to get this right so that the evil does not pass on anymore to future generations. We're going to have a revival, a renaissance. And so many people have all kinds of, again, mental health problems. Seed oils drive up, clinically, have been shown to drive up bipolar. Depression. They've been shown to increase schizophrenia. I know Dr. Chris Palmer, who's a Harvard psychiatrist, I've had on my show many times, who's literally gotten people to stop hearing the voices they've heard in their head for 30 years just by letting go of the seed oils and toxic processed foods. Praise God. Right? So this is the problem, is that we need to honor the body. And look, I'm one to, I'll tell you this. I have impaired my thyroid and metabolism over the years by doing crash dieting. It's wrong. Low calorie restriction is wrong. To restrict chronically low calorie impairs your thyroid. It damages your body. And people are literally gaining weight, eating 800 calories a day. There are women all over the place because their thyroid level is so low, is so impaired that they're trapped. And that's what Satan wants us to do. He wants us to hate the body, and he'll hit you from every way. He'll hit you from the conventional foods. And then he gets all this misinformation going in the diet world. And then the diet world becomes its own stronghold of oppression. That I have to, tear your body up. Sorry, I don't know what's tear your body up in the gym to the point where you're in pain and inflammation, and you're creating all these chronic diseases to fit some type of body type standard. This is an oppression as well. So there's a right way to heal metabolism, there's a wrong way. And I did it the wrong way too long. I did ketogenic dieting, I did low calorie. I was always trying to do that, and it made it worse and worse and worse. And I finally had to start, God had to humble me and say, you're gonna have to go slow. Don't worry. I'll find opportunities for you. As you're a big man, I'll find some opportunities for you while you slowly lose the weight the healthy way. And he got me into the pro wrestling business, actually. I found an opportunity where my size works to my advantage. I'm actually training with a WWE Hall of Famer, Dory Funk Jr., who's a multi-time world champion and fantastic man, great guy. But that's what we should have. We should have a joyful heart. We should have a beautiful attitude about our lives. We should love the planet Earth. When you look at the language that's used in Genesis to describe the creation, it's the same pattern and language used in the scripture to describe the building of the temple of God. This is meant to be God's home. This is meant to be his tabernacle. And we human beings are the crown jewel of his temple. And he wants to dwell here. Right? And so that's what I want people to think about tonight, is how we can really rethink the problems that we're in today. And I think that, CO2 is something that can be used in creative ways. I want to create clinics where people can go free of charge to have CO2 inhalation and CO2 on the skin to start healing diseases and afflictions, diabetic ulcers, inflammation, all these things. Right now, we should be starting these clinics right here in Mountain Brook. I want to start them in Florida and wherever else that my audience, because my audience is I have a national program, and wherever there's demand for it and opportunity, let's build free of use clinics, sponsored by donations. Let's get the church to roll up its sleeves and realize that it has an obligation to get out of the church and get into the community and get this empire redeemed in the name of Jesus Christ. So you look at what you see on television. It's doom, it's gloom. Oh, CO2 is rising, we're doomed. No, CO2 rising means plants are going to grow better. I'm doing research right now where we can take little trees, little saplings, little cutlings. I used to work in the citrus industry. I used to have some interest in that business. And you can take these little trees and using innovative technologies, including, here's a few. Did you know that plants can grow, increase their yield by 1/3 playing classical music? You ever heard about the Bible saying that creation sings, the trees praise for joy? This whole earth has got a sound and a music to it. The sound of music wasn't lying. You know that the hills are alive. The Bible is where they get this stuff from, you know? And so when you put beautiful music, I play this for my cows. I tried it. I played some awful music from the popular radio station. The cows were not happy. And then I stopped and I played some classical music. I played some opera. They liked Nessun Dorma. You remember that? Yeah. And so Luciano Pavarotti just made those cows. They were mesmerized. They were mesmerized like they were on the hills of Italy, even though they were in hot, muggy Florida. They were transfixed because they understand beauty, because that's the purpose of creation. It's not an and sum, it's the whole purpose. So I want to read this passage in the Bible, Romans 8, chapter 19. For the creation waits in eager expectation for the children of God to be revealed. For the creation was subjected to frustration, not by its own choice, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself will be liberated from its bondage to decay and brought into the freedom and glory of the children of God. Isn't that beautiful? What does it mean that the creation is waiting for the sons of God to be revealed and to set it free from its bondage to decay? I thought the whole point of Christianity is it's me and Jesus, and I just get my life right, and then I get whisked away. You know, I thought that's what I hear. Unfortunately, that's a part of it. It is your personal life. That's a big part of it. But that's not what Paul's talking about here. He's talking about creation is waiting for the sons of God to be revealed to set it free from its bondage to decay. When children are getting colon cancer at 10, I would say that's creation being in bondage to decay, wouldn't you? We're going the opposite direction there, aren't we? 2,000 years since Paul said that, and he didn't have kids getting colon cancer at 10. Okay, they had other issues, and we've beaten them, thank God. But we've gone backwards in a lot of ways because of our learned helplessness. All I got to do is go to church on Sunday and look like a Christian. And then just go back and do a little voting every 4 years. And that little weasel guy that I met one time that said he thinks just like me will do everything magically and fix it for me. That's not what Paul did. That's not what the early Christians did. You know how they took over the Roman Empire? They went to their pagan neighbors as they were dying of the plague. And those pagan neighbors had just laughed at them as their family members were being torn apart by lions, oftentimes. Some of those Christians were set with pitch as living candles. Imagine that? I mean, your family member is being tortured with wax, set afire as a candle, and you decide to go and love those peoples when they have a plague, that you're willing to risk your life to the point of death to minister to them, even though they've harmed your family members. And the Roman Empire said, there's no God we could ever have invented that has this kind of courage, that goes in the face of death and sends his followers in the face of death to his enemies. That's a powerful God. there's no God like that ever invented by mankind, because this is the true God. This is the way of God. He loves his enemies. He's willing to lay down his life for that. Now, are we willing to lay down our social life for this? At least our social life. I'm not asking you to run into somebody's, hospital bed and let them cough all over you. You should, if you feel called to do that by God. But what I'm asking you is, can you at least be willing to let go of your social life a little bit? Can you ease up on your desire to fit in and keep up with the Joneses, with high society and social status games? Are you willing to do that? If you could do that, that would be a great start to changing this world. What do you say, huh?
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much for having me, and I'm open to any questions or feedback. Well, I've worked in, my father was a pastor, and he passed away last year. And part of that journey of watching him, he ministered, and he had a tough affliction, series of different afflictions. And he was bedridden because of medical malpractice. They don't know how to, it's not medical malpractice, that's the standard practice is malpractice. I'll give you an example since you brought that up, the background. My father, like a lot of people, you probably have had COVID or know somebody who had COVID, they give you the oxygen mask. Anybody have oxygen when you go to a hospital? They put the oxygen mask on you so you can inhale oxygen. Well, that's really a bad idea, because when you get 100% oxygen, your body doesn't like it, it can't handle it, and you actually hyperventilate. And your hyperventilation is actually hyperventilating the CO2 out of your tissue. So here's what happened. My uncle passed away during the COVID malpractice standard of care because he came in with his oxygen level too low. And so he goes in there and they say, oh, we're going to give you an oxygen mask. And they said, oh, you're hyperventilating. You need to calm down, sir, calm down and just relax. No, that's what it does. Your body wasn't meant, when you're breathing in this air, it's not 100% oxygen. You got a whole mix of different different gases. And your body likes a blend. They used to use in hospitals a product called Carbogen. In Carbogen, you would inhale oxygen with about 5% CO2. And that allowed for effective healing. And then they did a big scare campaign to scare CO2 out of medicine. It was very effective. They demonized it to this day. So, they have my uncle on an oxygen mask, hyperventilate. Sir, calm down. Making you hyperventilating. Sir, it's your problem. You've got to relax. He's still hyperventilating. Okay, we've got to sedate him and put him on a ventilator. And that's going to force it now. Now you're forcing too much oxygen with a mechanical ventilation, and so many people died that way, including him. So, that is everything that's wrong with our system. But it's not just COVID. Do not let COVID be in isolation and go back to the standard of care and everything else. Let's rethink all of it.
Yes.
Let's rethink all of it. But yeah, so my background, I worked in radio, and then I created a national podcast. I'm a writer. I write for outlets, the American Conservative, Newsmax, different outlets like that. So I'm just happy to be here and share the message and hopefully start creating, that word they don't like to use, community organizer. We need to organize, and this is what Linda and Jace and other folks, community organizers, staying in the fight, and not just talking about it, about who we're going to elect, but I'm talking about real, amazing, boots on the ground stuff. I want to see free of charge therapies, research centers, resource centers, educating people and using outside the box things like ubiquitous carbon dioxide, which you can't patent Pfizer, so they'll never promote it. Anybody else?
Okay, yes, can I just say something? So y'all may have heard or seen on VidShoot or Rumble the documentaries Vaxxed 1 or Vaxxed and then Vaxxed 2. They came out a long time ago, pre-COVID, about exposing the evil and harm of vaccines, childhood vaccines. Anyway, they're excellent. You must see them. But Vaxxed 3 is being released miracle that it's even there one day. But you have to buy your tickets in advance or they may not show. It's going to be the summit, but Google, I can send it to Linda and she can pass it on, or you can Google, I don't know if you can Google it, maybe you can't Google it. Anyway, I don't know. But if you buy tickets in advance, it will come. And hopefully they already sold enough. They needed a certain amount.
They've already gotten enough.
They've already gotten enough. Okay, so it is coming. Yay. But September 18th, Vax 3, the summit at 7 o'clock. So, one day.
You can watch the other one.
And you can watch the other two on Rumble. Vaxxed and Vaxxed 2. They will change your life completely. You'll be horrified, but like Jordan said, in a righteous anger, and you will want to go tell everyone.
Yes.
Don't vaccinate your baby! Like, please!
Knowledge.
For the love of God!
Like, is the whole vaccine decoy ploy, falseness, is that something that everybody knows now? I have only recently heard that most vaccines are in fact poison in your body.
And it's bigger than ever now because of Kennedy mainstreaming it with his alliance with Trump, which was a great thing, yeah. And, again, 2018, I was the only guy that I was aware of, and anybody's ever shown me, that was talking about the seed oil epidemic. I was doing that 2018 every day on radio, every day, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7, Orlando, Tampa, and on the nation. And we just kept hitting that every day, toxic seed oil sludge. And then a few friends got on Twitter and started making memes, and it went viral. And now Kennedy's talking about it as an essential part of what they're going after if Trump gets in. That's pretty quick turnaround. So that's like a David versus Goliath story. I can play both parts, David and Goliath. But you see, that's what you can do. Don't ever say that you can't change things, okay? I wasn't born of money. I'm not a trust fund kid. I had to buy my way onto radio to get started, get advertisers to join me. And unfortunately, talk radio today is filled with a lot of vacuum cells, and heat and air conditioning, which is fine. These infomercials, so it's kind of like got to go through a slog before you get to something new and interesting on talk radio these days. But that's one of the reasons why we went to podcast, because we realized that there was a lot more, outside the box thinkers.
What is the name of your podcast?
My show's called A Neighbor's Choice, which is in reference to the Good Samaritan. What's your choice going to be? And then I have another show, which I call my advanced placement class, and that's where we get into anthropology of the Bible. The Bible is the key to all knowledge, and we deconstruct pagan mythology. We look at current events. That's called Things Hidden. And then my health show I do is called Seed Oil Survival, SOS. Seed Oil Survival. And then the other one that I do is Science and You. And that's because I think that this is a co-host of mine. His name is Dr. Yu, and he's a top physicist in the aerospace industry. And he created a new theory of everything that I think gives credence much better to the biblical God than the current false physics paradigm that we're living under. And you have to remember physics, I'll give you this a little tangent, but it's important. Physics is the holy of holies of this scientism religion. I want you to think about this. You got to know thy enemy. Remember who said that? And he understood that you have to figure out how they work. And at the core of scientism, which is the worship of these high priests of science, is the domain of physics. And there's a lot of great people there, but unfortunately the foundations are dogmas that are not true. Relativity, quantum physics, these are really just mysticism for atheists and agnostics. And when we get physics right, we'll get the understanding of the atom right. And then when we get the atom right, we'll get the cell right. And when we get the cell right, we get the body right. All right? And it starts to work out from there. So you got to start from the foundation and rethink it all in the name of Jesus Christ. Because God wants us to subject all things, because all things are under Him. And here's another thing. Jesus says, go and be like me. You will do greater things than me. Do we take that seriously? We're afraid to take that seriously, aren't we? And when you hear that passage, it makes you scared. I don't want to talk about that publicly. Why are you saying that publicly, David? What are you saying? That's scary. What are you trying to say? Well, I'm just saying what Jesus said.
That's right.
He said, you will do greater things than me. Do you take him seriously or not? I don't want to patronize what Jesus says. I take him very seriously.
Yes.
So if we're imitating him, that means we're going to do what he did. And what did Jesus do when he was here on earth? He performed signs and wonders. And he was healing people. And here's something I want to leave too with. A lot of Christians think when Jesus heals someone of blindness, for example, that it's just a metaphor for their spiritual blindness. It's not just that. He loves the way they see. He delights in them as a loving father, just like when you have a little kid and you delight in every little thing they do. That's how Jesus was. So that's how much importance he puts on the body. You can't separate body from soul. We have been lost in Gnosticism. Christians buy into it's all about the knowledge, all about the mind. And the body, just whatever the doctor says. I mean, how many people will hear tonight, think for a second, and then go back to whatever the white coat says?
That's right.
Huh? It's scary. I don't know. Even I, as someone who does this for a living, if they scare you enough, you don't know what you'll do at that moment, right? And take something that ruins your body worse.
That's right.
And Linda's an example of what happens when you stand strong and wait on God. Miraculous healing happens. And she's a living testimony of that. So that's why, when we want to actually take Jesus seriously, we'll start being Christians. So signs and wonders, you heal people. And Jesus didn't just heal them on their physical ailments. He met them where their scarcity issues were too. He met them when they're hungry. They had a few fishes and loaves. And he used that to feed their bellies. He cares about the little details. So we need to think about how to bring Christ and do signs and wonders in the marketplace.
Yes.
So when they're culling crops, they're tearing down crops right now. They're getting people to kill cattle in Europe because they want to depopulate and make beef expensive because it's so nutritious and so dense with nutrition. So what do? We meet them and we double down on glory and we give regenerative agriculture a chance. We start helping our local farmer switch over to sustainable practices. So you're staying away from the factory system, which is dependent on systems that the globalists control.
Yes.
The local farmer, Joel Salad, is a friend of mine in Virginia. And when they got hit with those hacks, remember those hacks? The beef producers were hit with hacks. There's like 4, we're supposed to be in a free market. There's like 4 or 5 beef distributors in America. It's like Soviet Union. And when he saw them get hit with the hacks, he was able to still sell his products because he was a decentralized farmer. When they had a big issue with the cost of fertilizer because of Ukraine war, he was fine. He didn't need their fertilizer. So that's sustainable. And they can't take out every little farmer. So support your farmer and buy from him direct if you can. And support your local, start a garden. And take, by the way, CO2. You can take, again, studies will show you, if you go into a greenhouse and you increase the CO2, triple what it is in the atmosphere, or even just a little bit, you can have dramatic double yield, dramatic fruit production, vitamin C through the roof in the oranges they did. They did this in Phoenix, Arizona. These studies don't get out there because who's the big industry supporting the carbon dioxide? You can't patent it. So you have to just look. You have to have a curious mind. That's why God says, worship him with your spirit and your mind, right? Your mind has to be part of this. You have to say, keep looking, Lord. I want to find the truth. And he'll give it to you. So you can take something like carbon dioxide, use a greenhouse, and you could probably double, triple, quadruple, put a little classical music, put a little light show in there. It's going to be a whole dance party for the trees. And then what's going to happen then? They're not going to have a culling of production. We're going to double, triple production and feed the world without relying on government. And that's how you start to let Pharaoh know that his days are numbered. Is that you meet him and his little weak magicians and their fake, stupid little ideas like plant-based meat. You meet those little snakes and you bring Yahweh, you bring Moses, and you bring a snake that devours all those fake little parlor tricks in one bite, right? That's what we do.